Oh man, oh man, oh man. It's been a few weeks, maybe a month almost, since the World Cup is over. And I cannot believe how this World Cup is still like the gift that keeps on giving. Look at that little crane. Wow. It's a gift that keeps on giving because I'm noticing that, oh, can you see that? Crane there. I'm noticing that the love for America after the World Cup is gone, but the love for America lives on. Also, not just the love though. There's still a lot of haters out there. But I wanted to talk a little bit about some of the love that I'm still seeing on the internet after all this time. I'm still seeing a lot of love for America, and it's great to see. It's great to see so many of these people, and it doesn't matter if it's a guy or a girl, or a man or a woman, talking about how their minds and how their lives have changed because of their trip to America for the World Cup. And as I said before, the real winners of the World Cup were the American people, because people from Europe and from all over the world, especially Europe, because what I'm starting to realize, and I didn't quite realize this before, was not only does Canada have a problem with hating on America, but Europe definitely has a problem with hating on America, and it's been there for a long time. I didn't realize that it was just as deeply ingrained in Great Britain and these types of places and in England as it was in Canada. So it seems to me, and Australia, I didn't realize all this. But as I start to see more and more videos still coming out from what people experienced in America during the World Cup, and how many of these people are actively talking about how they can move to the United States of America because of how welcoming and generous and wonderful the people are. And ultimately, that's all they're doing is feeling what freedom feels like. Because when you go back to different countries like England, or you go back to Canada, or you go back to wherever, places in Europe that have had little by little, had their rights taken away and had their abilities to speak freely taken away, have had their right to bear arms taken away, have had their right to religious freedom taken away, or they've been picking and choosing in their countries which religions are allowed and which ones aren't allowed, which ones you can make fun of and which ones you can't make fun of. And they're noticing it's really opened their eyes to the lack of freedom they have in their country, and truly to the lack of inclusivity they actually have in their country. In most of these European countries, and most of these in Canada and in Australia, people think that they're inclusive because they say that they include everybody. But they essentially only include people that fit within their worldview. And that's the opposite of inclusive. That's exclusive. So I find it interesting how I still see all these videos on people's love for America that I had a chance to visit it. Now, I don't want to talk about all the big stories. We already know about those wonderful, wonderful Scots that drank Boston out of beer. I mean, that's one of those all-time great stories. Imagine that, one country coming in to drink all your beer. You got to love that. I'm not going to talk about the incredible Norwegian fans and the Norwegian row, the Viking row, and Bratthalland. Probably one of my favorite aspects from my favorite football players that actually went to America and Texas and stuff. It's got to be Bratthalland, the guy from Norway, the big tall Viking dude. He's like 6'6", wearing the cowboy hat, and really embracing the American culture. He was photoed on a plane with like a piece of taxidermy. I think it was like a raccoon or something, coming off the plane with that. Just go to his place in Norway. No, I'm not going to talk about that. I'm not going to talk about the countless videos out there of people talking about American hospitality, talking about the portion of food they get in America, the endless fountain drinks. So endless drinks. You pay for one drink and you keep on getting a free refill. I'm not going to talk about the huge gas stations that people talk about and how gas stations are like massive, massive, massive grocery stores. No, I'm not going to talk about that. I'm not going to talk about their love for Chick-fil-A and all the different American fast food joints and Walmart and Costco. No, I'm not going to talk about that. I'm not going to talk. I will talk about one story I felt was very, very cool. And it's got to be the story about this English dude named Oliver. You probably heard this story, but essentially this guy he got a ticket last minute to go see England in the World Cup. He flew to the United States, and as soon as he got there, he started to realize that everything he'd been told in his country, in England, on the media, from the government, how he's educated, how he grew up, university, you name it, he found out for himself that it was all untrue. He found out how the American people truly were. He found out how America truly was. And he was recording his natural experiences along the way. And even though he's only supposed to be there for a couple of days, he's only supposed to see one game, some of his videos went viral. Some of his videos went viral, and he caught the attention of the White House. And he ended up going to, I believe it was Dallas or somewhere. He ended up going somewhere, and he ended up meeting and having a handshake with the President of the United States of America, Donald J. Trump. And, you know, and it's also, he ended up getting onto Fox News and telling his story. And one of the big things that he did, he was one of the big people that started the trend of apologizing to America for thinking that they were one way and thinking that Americans were arrogant and Americans are loud and they were this and they were that. And then finding out later on for themselves, once they visited America, that America was completely different. He was one of those people kind of started that trend of apologizing to America. And they ended up starting a GoFundMe page for him. People ended up starting a GoFundMe page for him because they wanted him to be able to stay in America and go to more of the World Cup games. So he ended up raising like 22,000 pounds, I think, or 20,000 pounds or something like that, which is like 25,000 American or something like that. But instead, so he was going to go to another England game, was 1,800 American for a ticket. But instead of that, because of the overwhelming love he felt from the American people, he decided to take that money and he decided to travel across America. He decided to go across many different places and states and small towns. He decided to meet as many people as he could across America to see, is this real? Is this true? And he documented his experiences going across America. He documented his experience getting a cowboy hat, how the person sat there and helped fit it for him, and to make sure that it was the right look and it was comfortable in his head, and just talked about that. He rented a big GMC truck and he drove it all the way through. He drove it all the way through America. And he just talked about his experience of driving the GMC and how it felt to be in a big truck and listen to country music. Now, I don't have any problem with GMC. My dad's a Chevy man himself. So was my grandfather. You'd only buy Chevy trucks, but that's okay. At that same time he was doing that, he was getting all this hate from back home. People were posting on his channel and on his Instagram and all this stuff, and they were saying, they're like, cancel his citizenship. Don't come back. And you just hear all these people talking about, and all this vitriol that he was getting from his own countrymen because he was just sharing his genuine impressions of the United States of America. The reason why I find this particular situation so interesting is because I've had this exact same thing happen to me. Every time, I drop video after video after video. The difference is he wasn't actually dunking on England. He was just talking about how much he loved America. The difference is I actually dunk on Canada. I take my time to explain what I don't like about Canada and express what I think is what they got wrong about America, and I call out the American or the Canadian psyche. But I get the same thing happen to me. If you look at my comments and stuff, a lot of people say the same thing to me. Why are you in Canada? Get out of Canada. Get rid of his citizenship. You think go be American. Do all this. I get the same thing, the same vitriol, the same hate comes from me from Canada. And I'm just like, I can feel for the guy a little bit. But I love the fact that what he did is he just kept on traveling and he kept on sharing his experiences. And he kept calling the people out and saying, you're wrong. And what he did was he challenged everybody in his country. He's like, if I'm wrong, come to America. Come check it out for yourself. Come see. Come see what there's really like here. And I think that was one of the best things you could ever say. See, because one of the things a few things I've learned about America is, number one, they're worried about what's going on in their own country. A lot of Americans didn't even know the World Cup was going on. A lot of Americans didn't care the World Cup was going on. And it wasn't until a little bit later, as the World Cup was getting going, and finally we start seeing some positive press for the American people in America, that kind of America noticed. Because usually, let's be honest, usually the press about America is negative, and it's always about this and about that. It's about how all these different things about Americans that are not true. Basically the opposite of what Americans are. And so it's for the first time in a long time, the international press was having a hard time covering America in a negative light, because all their own countrymen went to that country and were starting to calling them out for all the lies they've been saying about America. And the same thing happens in Canada. And the fact of the matter is, and I think this is what I think is happening a little bit here, is that when you see another country, like America, for example, you see a country that has gone its own way, has carved its own path, and had to fight for it. And I think what people are seeing in all these other countries is that the American people in the fighting spirit, it's not, you don't fight for your sovereignty, you don't fight for your freedom once. You don't just have one day, the 4th, and you're free. It's a consistent thing you need to do every single day. Anytime your rights are challenged, anytime something is challenged, especially anything in the Constitution, it's up to you, it's up to every single individual American to fight to keep that right. And you can't just sit there and stand on the sidelines. You have to actively participate in your society if you want it to stay free. And I think a lot of these countries, especially Canada, I'm not sure, Canada still hasn't realized that it takes all of us individually fighting to keep our own rights. And that collectivism and socialism all ends in the same place for the most part. It all ends in dictatorship. It all ends in misery. And America is the love. There's a love for America, but there's a love for the individual and the pursuit of happiness. And there's still a love. And I find that there's still a love for God, and there's still a love for freedom, and there's still a love for freedom of speech and the right to bear arms, and that's an important aspect of the American culture. And as a result of that, it brings a little bit more happiness because you're not worried about saying something and going to jail like in Canada. Now, if I say the wrong thing, I can end up in jail. I can be fined. I could be put on a list. My bank accounts could be frozen. You saw what happened to the truckers. They disagreed with the government. What happened? They froze their bank accounts. People are still in jail to this day over that particular scenario because they are fighting tyranny and oppression. And then I asked the question when we talk about Bill C-9 in Canada, what about all the hate speech that was directed towards people that disagreed with all of the draconian measures taken throughout the 2020s, and how that was all unraveled? What about all those people? What about all the vitriol that was sent at us then? And I find that when people start to lose freedom in their own country, instead of blaming themselves, instead of blaming their lack of a fight, instead of looking at what's going on and looking at their leaders and looking at their politics and looking at their state of being, they want to find the closest, easiest person to point the finger at and blame, and that's America. And I think that's sad. But the fact of the matter is, and the other thing is, I think Mark Twain said this, it's easy for somebody to be fooled than it is for them to believe they've been fooled. And I think one of the biggest things you can do as an individual or as a person is, once you've realized you've been fooled, instead of doubling down and just ignoring it, admitting you've been fooled and changing. And I think what's happening right now is a lot of people are having a tough time admitting they've been fooled. And the people that have actually noticed and realized they've been fooled, and now they're singing it from wherever they can, and they're singing the praises of America, people resent that because they don't have the bravery to do it. They don't have the courage to do it. And right now in Canada, we need people to be courageous and to speak up, especially against all these draconian measures taking away our rights to free speech and for our rights to criticize the government, allegedly. So I think it's easy for people to blame the beautiful, free country of America. And let's be honest, this is essentially the only free country in the world is the United States of America. Because Canada sure isn't free. Just look at the taxes. Just look at what you're able to do. Look at what you're able to say. Look at how everything's being limited. Look at how you're not even now in Canada, you're not even allowed to use the word God in the military. So we're seeing, and this is happening all over the world. And ultimately, I would say, in my opinion, the majority of one of the things when a country loses faith in God and becomes an atheistic country, kind of like how Canada and England and the UK and Germany, if you ask a lot of people in these countries, not all, but many, they'll tell you that they don't believe in God. And what happens when you don't believe in God is the state becomes your de facto God. And the scientists become your de facto priests or preachers. And you end up replacing God with something else. Whereas America still has her love for God. It still has her love for the Constitution and freedom. And they understand that there's something bigger than them. There's something bigger than the individual. There's something bigger than America, and there's a little something called God. And I think that people need to understand that you don't have to even call it God. There is a higher power. We come from somewhere. We don't come from the primordial ooze. And I think that right now at this point, when people lose God, you see what happens to their country. Very quickly it falls apart. And I feel like America, especially of late, 250 years of America, the one thing that she still has is the love for God, and that's why you still see America thrive. And that's why you see people still understanding the importance of freedom. Freedom of speech isn't about agreeing with everybody. It's about your right to hear things you disagree with. And that's okay. It's okay to disagree with people. And because once you can't disagree with people, then that's where tyranny truly comes from. If you look at any society that's outlawed or that has made that has got rid of freedom of speech, or they've really enforced censorship, think about those societies. Think about the Soviet Union. Think about Germany in the 1933 to 1945. What did they do? Some of the first things they did was they limited and censored free speech, they censored books, and they took away the guns from the people. And this is how every tyrannical state does it. This is how they've always done it for the history of time. And you can see that real time in Australia, you can see that real time in England, in the United Kingdom, you can see that real time in Canada. So I think it's time for us to realize that, and for us to understand what's happening in our own country, for us to look across and to, instead of looking at America and Americans like our rivals, we need to look at America and Americans like our mentors. This is a country we can learn from. Constitutional republic seems to me like the way to go. We should have our own constitution here in Canada. And I think Canadians, it's time for us to start thinking about how do we start making right in our own history, and how do we start building our own constitution here in Canada, just like America. And I think we need to really start looking at America as a mentor. Let me know your thoughts. America, what do you think? Do you still think that the love from the World Cup is still spilling over? And how do you feel about, I mean, a lot of Americans, I know you don't think about Canada, I know you don't think about what other people think about you, but what do you think about the love and the hate that you get from different countries, if at all? And how do you feel about the freedoms that you have in your country? Is it something that you need to fight for every single day? Is it something that when you look at your flag and you listen to your national anthem, you're proud of, and you think about your whole history and all the people that built your country, not only by the people that fought in the military and fought for the freedom, but the people, the founders, and all the people, the small business owners, and all the people that make America what it is. All the people that came before you. That's why these things matter. The flag matters and the Star Spangled Banner matters. Let me know your thoughts. I'm Matt Ross. I'm the Known Wolf.